Carlotta is going to be giving us a presentation on monarch butterflies in your garden, and then we will turn and answer some questions that have come in on gardening and horticultural topics. So Carlotta, are you ready to go?
You've got the button. So do you, okay. Anne, are you going to start it?
I'm also a second grade teacher at Centerville Elementary School. Today, I want to talk to you about my burning passion, monarch butterflies. The life cycle of the monarch butterfly is part of our second grade science curriculum. And 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to attend a workshop where I learned how to look for their eggs, raise caterpillars, and release monarchs into the wild. This was an incredibly powerful experience and is even more powerful to share with children and adults. So many people, myself included, may go most of their lives without witnessing this miracle. Last summer, as a first-year intern, I shared my caterpillars with many who stopped at our plant clinics. Today, I want to briefly discuss what you can do to attract these exquisite creatures to your garden and maybe even observe them for yourselves. Did you know that monarch butterflies migrate? East of the Rocky Mountains, they overwinter in the Oyamel forest of Mexico, but in spring, they begin a 3,000-mile migration of successive generations that will take them as far north as Toronto, Canada. So along their route, they'll need food and water, and of course, a place to lay their eggs. Monarchs are wonderful to have around. They're pollinators. They're attracted to flowering plants for their nectar. Some of the best flowers to attract monarchs are zinnias, Mexican sunflower, salvia, and of course, butterfly weed and common milkweed. Because of their migratory pattern in our area, it's best to have flowering plants from May 1st through October 1st. Keep in mind, though, that if you want beneficial insects, you can't use pesticides because they'll harm both adults and their offspring. The flip side is the biodiversity in your garden is going to be better for everyone and everything. It's also beneficial to have shrubs, sturdy grasses, and other plants or rocks to provide shelter in inclement weather. One raindrop hitting a small butterfly can be devastating. However, they are known to find shelter in rocky crevices and under leaves on sturdy bushes. Once you've attracted them to your garden, it's even better to have common milkweed and butterfly weed available for females to lay their eggs because the plants in the milkweed family are the only thing monarch caterpillars eat. You can start it from seed, however, they need to go through cold stratification. Swamp milkweed and butterfly weed are native to Northern Virginia, but in driving around the area, many medians have common milkweed. And you know you're a second grade teacher when you can spot milkweed growing while driving 60 miles an hour down the interstate. Local nurseries have many varietals, including swamp milkweed, purple milkweed, common milkweed, butterfly weed, world milkweed, and green milkweed. It's the toxicity of the milkweed sap that protects these insects from birds and other vertebrates. However, the eggs and caterpillars are not without predators. Ants love the eggs, and tachinid flies and parasitic wasps will lay their eggs in the caterpillars. Interestingly, our second grade social studies curriculum includes the study of Native Americans, and one of our resources says that early spring milkweed and early fresh green seed pods were used as food in soups and stews. So now that you've provided their perfect sanctuary, you'll want to know what to look for. The first time I successfully found eggs is because I happened to be in the garden and watch a female flit from leaf to leaf. The eggs look like tiny white footballs standing up tall. The female monarch lays one egg on a leaf only, and whenever available, she'll go for the newest, softest growth on the plant because she wants to ensure that the little caterpillar has plenty of food when they first hatch. From the time the egg is laid, it takes about 3 days to hatch. From the time they hatch until they pupate, their body will go through 5 stages, or what we call instars, until it has increased in size 30,000 times its weight from hatching. Most monarch chrysalids won't be found in the milkweed garden because they're at their most vulnerable stage. When the caterpillar is about 2 weeks old, it'll go on a walkabout. This is their chance to find a safe, secure, out-of-the-way spot to form their chrysalis, where they'll spend the next 10 to 14 days. The whole life cycle, with optimal food and temperatures, egg to adult, is about 30 days. During the summer, the lifespan of the monarch butterfly is only 2 to 6 weeks. What's really cool about them is that long about mid to late August, the adults become what are known as the Methuselah generation. This is because their brain recognizes the shortening days, and this generation undertakes a 3,000-mile migration back to Mexico. Since migration is their sole purpose at this point, this generation doesn't mate or lay eggs. They're focused only on their journey, which will take them as high as 11,000 feet. How do you silence a room full of second graders? It's loaded with fluid, and what's going to happen is now the butterfly is going to pump that fluid into its wings and expand its wings. Butterflies eclose with shriveled, wet wings and a large body of fluid they'll pump into their wings to expand them. Before a butterfly is ready to fly, their wings need to dry. That takes 2 to 3 hours. They also aren't ready for food for about 24 hours. Monarch butterflies taste with their feet and then unfurl their proboscis to drink nectar. They don't have lungs either, but instead breathe through tiny vents in their thorax. Here are some butterflies ready to release. One comment about milkweed: it is very susceptible to oleander aphids. You might want to invest in ladybugs. Otherwise, you'll be spending a lot of time pinching them off with your fingers and turning your fingers orange. So when you leave the flowers on the plants, the milkweed pods, the seed pods form, and you can see those at the very top of that stalk right there. They're susceptible to other members of the milkweed community milkweed bugs love the seed pods. If I leave the seed pods on, they get very dry. They'll crack and split open, and the wind will carry off the seeds to overwinter, cold stratify, and hopefully sprout in the spring. But sometimes I keep the seeds for myself, and then late into the fall, we go outside and play with them and let the kids sprinkle them around, and hopefully the wind carries them off. Another thing my class is part of is something called the Global Classroom Project. We found a school in Taiwan who also works with us because they have migrating butterflies in Taiwan. And we're going to learn about those in the coming year. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and I look forward to hearing from you and answering your questions and maybe coming back and talking more about monarch butterflies. Thank you.
Well, Carlotta, that was terrific. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed doing it.
What we'll do now is, there was a question that came in specifically about monarchs and what kind of milkweeds are there for monarchs. So I know you answered that in part of your video clip, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Monarchs love any Asclepias that's available. They particularly love the common milkweed that we have in our gardens at our school. And if they're started on common milkweed, they're fine with that. Sometimes if you start them on butterfly weed, then they don't necessarily like the common milkweed as much, but if it's there, they will eat it, definitely.
Thank you. I also looked up in the government of Virginia, put out a list of the common plants that monarchs like. And many of these we see in a lot of our gardens, like the milkweed as you're talking about, but the asters, the coreopsis, the sunflowers, the bee balms, the phlox, the goldenrod.
Anything with nectar, they're going to go after.
I think the one thing that you said that's really important is the relationship between the caterpillar and the milkweed.
As far as the caterpillar goes, it's the only thing they can eat. So that's why if you want to attract them to your garden, it's wonderful, but you've got to have the nectar flowers so they can eat while they're there, and then they will lay their eggs. The females would definitely lay their eggs on the milkweed. But all of the other flowers need to be there to attract them as well. That's why we start with, I said May through October. I've found eggs as early as May and as late as October, but usually by the time we get to mid-August, they're going to start migrating. That's why it's nice to have something continually blooming in your garden all summer. I see some questions here. I have had caterpillars. I've kept them and raised them over the summer. in the last 2 years. And that's why you saw them in those rearing cages is what we call them. And it's easier that way for me to use them for the classroom and put them in cages like that. I usually find the eggs and bring the eggs in, so they are, they start straight from their eggs. I don't necessarily bring in any caterpillars that I find in the wild, especially if they're past their second or third instar, because there's always a really good possibility that they've been infected by OE, which is I forget, it's a parasite or something. It's something that's there in the environment that can destroy them. So it's always good to just start with eggs if you want to rear them in the cages.